a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Thomas. On this episode, guys, I got the honor to sit down with the legendary Jim Goodall. If you've been following his work at all, he's got 27 books in print. The Amazon link to how to find those is in the show notes. He writes on aeronautics. He's got a few books on submarines. He's absolutely fascinating. Now, beyond that, we talked about his relationship with Bob Lazar, right? When he met Bob Lazar at John Leer's house, hanging out. He was also pen pals with Ben Rich of the Lockheed Skunk Works, of course, and he is famous for quite a few ominous quotes that were cited around the UFO community quite a bit. He talks about Area 51. We have just a fantastic conversation. Like I said, he's a legend, guys. So this was a true honor for me personally. So all the ways to find him and his books are, of course, going to be linked down in the show notes. And just without further ado, guys, Mr. Jim Goodall. Ladies and gentlemen, on the show today, we have the legend, Jim Goodall. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's a little bit warm. It hit 99 yesterday.
Because you're out there in Arizona.
Right. And the average temperature over the next 10 days is going to be 90 degrees. So summer is upon us, even though some areas of the states it's snowing. But
it's wild, man, because we get the same thing out here in Texas, and I'm in North Texas, and it seems like a lot of the times we go straight from winter to summer. We get about 2 weeks where it's just absolutely gorgeous. And, you know, I'm out here mowing, and it's wonderful, and the butterflies are out, dude, and then all of a sudden it's like, and 120. It's like, okay, cool.
Yep.
That's just what we do, man, but it's better than freezing cold in my mind. I don't live in Texas because I like cold weather. Besides the weather out there in Arizona, how's everything going, man? I saw you just got a little puppy.
Yeah, her name is Scarlett. She was a feral rescue German Shepherd dog, and she is beautiful. Well, you had a chance to see her when you were here.
I saw the pictures of her. Yes, sir. Yeah.
But you were here.
No, that was Darcy Weir.
Darcy. Okay, that's right. Okay. I'm sorry.
He's a good friend of mine. You know what?
The two of you.
I'm flattered. If you think that I look like Darcy, he's a handsome guy, and I do appreciate
Well, I was saying that you look a little bit different, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
No, he's a good friend of the show. He's been on twice, actually. He came on with Stephen Bassett, and then he was just recently on with Gary King, and we did an episode about crop circles, and it was fantastic.
Okay.
He's a fascinating guy. So I heard he came out there and stayed with y'all?
Yep. I flew in from Houston, spent 2 days here. We did a quick run into the Pima Air and Space Museum, because he wanted to see a blackbird up close and personal.
Absolutely.
And so that's where I brought him. And we didn't spend much time there, but he had a great time. He's looking forward to coming back.
He's a great guy. So, yeah. When he was down in Houston, I tried to drive down there. It's about 5 hours from us, and I just couldn't get the time, man. And I just messaged him kind of last minute. I was like, dude, I'm not going to be able to make this happen. He was like, I completely understand. He's a sweetheart. He's a great guy. So he was interviewing you for his next film, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We did one thing for the Cousin Brothers for a lead in on one thing they're doing. And then I think he interviewed me for 4 hours, 2.5 or 4 hours. And we could have gone all night. I mean, the one thing I'm really good at is talking.
Well, perfect. Then in fact, to that point, if you don't mind, sir, for the audience of mine that doesn't know you as well as I do, if you could just give us a little rundown of yourself, just a little backstory.
Okay, I'm a retired Air Force Air National Guard Master Sergeant. On March 10th, 1964, I saw my first blackbird. I was Airman Second. That's 2 stripes. Of course, they don't use that term anymore because it's politically incorrect. And never in my life did I ever think that I would be one of the foremost historians on the Blackbird program Area 51, F-117, and basically all things Skunk Works. And it's just been fun. And the last thing in the world I ever wanted to do was to write. I hated term papers in school. I mean, with a passion. If I had a term paper to go, say 500 words, I have 6 weeks to do it. So it's maybe a couple words a day, and I could have had it done 3:00 in the morning or the night it's due with a Smith's Corona. That's a typewriter for those millennials out there that have never seen one. So I'm pounding away, and the last thing I ever thought I'd ever do would be a published author. And
get that thing up there. Look at that.
This is my 27th book. You got it all?
Well, actually, it's perfect because whenever you covered it up, it showed the one in the back on your book stand there. So that worked perfectly. So yeah, 75 years of Skunk Works. So for the audience that doesn't know as well, break down Skunk Works for us. What is that?
The Skunk Works is probably the most advanced aeronautical design group in the world. It was put together by Kelly Johnson in the middle of World War II. 1943, they were given a request for proposal to build a jet fighter, which was going to be the XP-80. And Kelly Johnson got the contract. He was able, from sign a contract to first flight, was 143 days. I mean, that's what the Skunk Works is all about. And then the next major airplane to come out of the Skunk Works was the C-130. Everybody in the Air Force since the mid-1950s has flown or seen a C-130. And then after that came the U-2. And Ben Rich, he replaced Kelly Johnson as the president. Ben Rich always felt that the most important airplane ever to come out of the Skunk Works was the U-2. And it first flew on 4th of July, 1955. And the U-2S is still flying today. It's just an incredible, it's a jet powered glider. And on May 1st, 1960, Francis Gary Powers was shot down in a U-2 flying over the Central Soviet Union. And those, again, for the youngsters out there, that's what Russia used to be called when it was the Soviet Union.
Thank you. We do have a wide audience here, so thank
I
you
know.
for that.
I mentioned stuff that to me is just everyday knowledge, and people scratch their heads. What the heck are you talking about? I mean, when I grew up, we had the first TV in the neighborhood. It was 1947, and we had 3 channels, 4, 5, and 13. And then we got channel, I think it was channel 2 or channel 3, which was the PBS affiliate. And I was the remote. Jimmy, go change the channel. And we had rabbit ears and a screen that was about this big.
Yep.
And black and white.
High technology.
Yeah. And color didn't come in until in the late 1950s. And we had a neighbor of a buddy of mine. They went out and bought one of the very first RCA color TVs. And this is in the late 1950s. And it was $2,400 in 1956 or $57.
Yeah.
So today that would be a $30,000 TV. And the color was just terrible. So especially by today's standards. I mean, you look at some of the really high definition, TV screens with running something on 8K or whatever, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Well, so I wanted to come back to your books for a little bit. So the books that you've done, you have a high affinity for anything aeronautics. You even did a few books on submarines, on the Ohio class, right? And you have done some incredible research on that. Now, back to what you said about your term papers and how you couldn't see yourself being an author because of how taxing even envisioning writing a term paper was. Well, it's probably because you weren't writing on a subject that you cared about, that you enjoyed, that you were so passionate about as what you do in your books. And that's why you've been so successful with your books.
Well, I mean, a couple of people have asked me, says, why in the world, since you like the Blackbird, Area 51, the F-117, the U-2, UFOs, and whatever, how in the heck did you get interested in submarines? I said, they're black, they're stealth, and they're deadly. So it meets all the qualifications, and it's secretive.
Yep.
I mean, it took me 7.5 years to get on a Seawolf class submarine. I got on the USS Connecticut, SSN 22, in the August of 17. It took me 7.5 years to finally get on it. And I ran into I had some stuff posted. I got an email from a guy who said, hey, I was on the Connecticut. I was also on the Seawolf. He said, how in the hell did you get on there with a camera? I said, not only did I get on there with a camera, I photographed everything from the reactor bulkhead forward. And the thing about the Seawolf class, they only have 3 of them. They have the Seawolf, the Connecticut, and the Jimmy Carter. The Jimmy Carter is a spook boat, which adds another flavor to my to my palate. But when either the Seawolf or the Connecticut, when they go out on patrol, they have a 2-story torpedo room. They have 8 torpedo tubes, and when they go on patrol, they carry 50 torpedoes. One Seawolf class submarine is designed to take out the entire Soviet Northern Fleet when it was designed. I've been in 19 submarines. I've been at 400 feet deep on a ballistic missile submarine. I've been up on the sail going through the Straits of Juan de Fuca on the USS Henry M. Jackson. And behind me were 100 hydrogen bombs. Dang. So I looked around and I said, well, Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman have nothing on me as far as, on Crimson Tide.
Nice pull of Crimson Tide. Absolutely. Well,
right.
that is one thing I have no desire to do, man. I think a submarine is probably the most terrifying thing I can think about. So were you just overwhelmed with how amazing that is, or do you just not have a fear of being in a submarine that deep?
No, I've been married 3 times, so.
Okay, that's
so
absolutely.
No, I absolutely no concern whatsoever. Now I have formally, COVID screwed a lot of things up, but I have resubmitted my request on the next Virginia class submarine leaving refit from Bremerton, Washington, going back to Pearl Harbor. I want to be on one of those boats. I want to document what it's like going on a 2,400 mile transit underwater. And if something happens, it happens. I mean, I put my life in jeopardy so many times on my hobbies and my loves that it's no big thing anymore.
Well, what was in the most hairy situation that you've been in that you didn't think you'd make it out of, but that you did?
Mountain climbing. we
Really?
went out. Yeah, this is when I was stationed in Denver back in the early 60s. We were on our way to Estes Park, and a guy named Lyle was a buddy of mine. He was a Russian linguist. But we had a backpack filled with Country Club malt liquor, which is a fortified malt liquor. I mean, 2 small cans will put you on your fanny. And we're drinking as we're climbing. It was a hike up to the top of this pinnacle. When we got to the top of the pinnacle and we looked straight down, it's over 800 feet. And then we couldn't remember what path we took to go up there. And now we're really blitzed. So we're going on a ledge about this wide and it's angled about so. So we're walking, very gingerly walking on it, but there's a crack and we can see where we're supposed to be, where we can now start walking normally, but you have to jump about a 3.5 foot crack that had no walk. So you had to jump from one side of the crack to the other. And I swear, if you go back and find that exact spot where I jumped, and it took me about 20 minutes before I screwed up enough courage, and I sobered up really fast, also.
Yeah, I would think.
But
so.
I bet if you went and looked, you could find the imprints of my hands in the granite as I grabbed the cracks on the other side.
Damn! So you had to jump, and you were actually hanging on to the other side.
Yeah, no, there was another shelf there.
I see. I see. But still, I mean, damn, man. Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah. In my times out in the desert, probably the most interesting one, I was with John Leer. We were at the fence line at Tonopah Test Range. This is in 96. This is supposedly it was on caretaker status. We're out there about 11 o'clock at night. We're out there on our lawn chairs. You tape up your cuffs of your pants so the scorpions don't crawl up your legs. And we both have night vision goggles on. And I looked to the south of me, and there's a armored personnel carrier coming up from the south, one coming from the east, one coming from the west. And I stand up and yell really loud, "Hey, we're good guys, we're taxpayers." And all of a sudden we had floodlights on us. John had 3 little red dots dancing on his chest. I had 3 little red dots on mine. Now, for all I know, they were just pointers, but it has the effect of saying, "Oh boy, I've been lit up." You don't want to
assume, right?
Yeah. And then behind John Lear's truck, this other guy came dressed in desert BDUs, and he has his hand on his gun. Now, both John and I, he has a 45. I have a Beretta, 9mm Beretta. It's for critters.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy said, "You're in a restricted area, and I'm ordering you to leave." And I said, "Sir, I don't know who you are, but this is public lands, and we don't have to go anywhere." I said, "I'm ordering you to leave." And I said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Captain So-and-so with Advanced Security, Inc." I said, "Well, you're a rent-a-cop. You don't have any jurisdiction on this side of the fence." And you can just see his jaws just tightening up. I mean, he's pissed.
Yeah.
So I want to see some ID. And I said, "Sir, I don't have to show you anything." So, "Well, you're in a restricted area, and you are going to leave now." And I pull out a map out of my back pocket, an aeronautical map printed by the federal government that gives the boundaries of restricted areas to the second, longitude and latitude. And I told this ASI guy, I said, "If you look down at the corner of the base of that fence post over there, you'll see a USGS medallion. And it gives the longitude and latitude of where we're at. According to this official government piece of paper, I'm on public lands, and I can be here for 15 consecutive days without asking anybody's permission." And that's when I said, "Well, I want to see some ID." I said, I haven't done any reason for me to give you an ID. He said, "Well, I've been deputized by Nye, Esmeralda, and Lincoln County, the state of Nevada, to uphold the laws of the federal government and the state of Nevada." I said, "Well, good for you." And you can see he's getting more pissed as it goes on. I said, "I tell you what, you show me yours, I'll show you mine." So he hands me his ASI badge. I said, "Sir, that's not a valid form of ID. I need something issued by the state or federal government." And boy, his jaws are he's just popping out and a whole bit. So he hands me his Nevada driver's license. I don't have my glasses on. So I pull out my Minnesota driver's license because Minnesota was home back then. Leer lives in Vegas. He still has his feet up on the barbed wire. And this guy hands it to a guy on the south side of the fence who goes to one of the armored personnel carriers, and light turned on, and his supervisor, more than likely. And I heard him say, and I'm real hard of hearing, I heard him say, "Oh shit, it's Goodall and Leer." And the lights went off, the red dots went away. Guy came back, gave us our ID, and they dispersed. But they knew we were there, and we knew that we were never going to see anything exciting happen that night.
Got you, because they were aware that you were there.
Right. And I've had guns in my face. I've been threatened. I was tried to be threatened to come off of Freedom Ridge, which they eventually took away. But what they didn't know, of the 10 people that were up there in my crew, this is 3:00 in the morning. One of them was the chief of police of Tulare, California, his commandant, his chief detective, homicide detective, and another detective. Plus, there was Stu Brown from Popular Science. There was John Andrews from Testers, Glenn Campbell from the Area 51 Research Center, and 2 or 3 other guys. It was you wake up with a flashlight in your face, guys with their hands on their weapon, and they were giving us a bunch of crap. And finally, they left. And I put my night vision goggles on. And I looked down the bottom of the hill. There was about 30 people surrounding the small little mountain we were on, and we could drive up to it. I think that's what really irritated the hell out of them, because we found a way to drive up there. So those are the things that you run into when you're in the middle of nowhere, snooping on the federal government, which is one of my hobbies.
Yeah. Well, of course, and you want to know what's going on out there. So how did you meet John Leer? Because his dad, of course, made the Learjet. That's what his dad's famous for. But John Leer himself has been he was a pilot. I mean, he did a ton of cool stuff. And he is famous. Well, one of the things he's famous for, of course, is the introduction of Bob Lazar, I believe, to George Knapp. And that's how the Bob Lazar story came out. And I know you have a story with Bob Lazar as well. Isn't that correct? Correct.
I had in 1971 or 72, I got a call from a buddy of mine who worked at the Air Force Museum. He was a retired master sergeant. His name was Dave Menard. He said a friend of his, who was one of the key people at Testers model, where they make plastic scale models, said he wants to do a 1/4-inch scale model of the Blackbird, and he keeps running into brick walls. And he said, who out there knows anything about the Blackbird that can help me? And Dave said, with your permission, I will give John your number. So he did. And John Andrews and I became instant friends. I mean, it was like a brother from another mother. And the moment I met him face to face, it was like I was meeting an old friend for the very first time. So I linked up with John and Andrews, and he said, hey, I got a buddy of mine I know you're going to enjoy. His name is John Leer. His dad was William Leer. So I got an introduction to him with John. We went over to Leer's house, and Andrews introduced me to him. So and then John Leer, he's a walking comic book, is what he is. And you never know when he's pulling your leg. But he's a great guy. I think the world of him. I thought we were going to lose him about 4 or 5 years ago. He's been in 3 plane crashes where he broke his feet. I mean, he shattered his feet, and he's had trouble with his feet ever since. And he was a young kid. I mean, I think he was still in his teens when he crashed his first airplane. But John and I are like 2 peas in a pod. We're both a little bit on the crazy side. But I was in Vegas with John. This is January of '89, and I wanted to photograph an F-117. They had announced it in November. No one had really seen it. There was a terrible compressed photo taken from a tanker, taken at night, backlit, of an F-117, but you really couldn't tell what was there. So John says, well, I think I know where they're flying out of. It's just outside of the town of Tonopah. So we're going up US 95, and we're just near Scotty's Junction. And Scotty's Junction is one of the legal houses of ill repute, whorehouse, whatever you want to call it. And an F-117 went flying right over, just about a 45-degree angle, right across my bow. He was at about 1,500 feet, and I about crashed the car. So we get into Tonopah, we grab a quick bite, we drive down US 6 to the turnoff. It's about 14 miles, and then you go down 18 miles down to the main gate of Tonopah Test Range. A lot of activities, and John and I just took the dirt road on the north side of the fence line. And we're out there for a while, and I look to the north of me, and I can see a little white dot and a bigger black dot. And I'm watching, and all of a sudden I realize it's an F-117 with a T-38 chase. So I have print film. This is way before digital. And it's coming towards me and I'm just shooting away and seeing something that no one else has seen, no one outside of Lockheed and the guys that worked at Area 51 and at Tonopah. It was like being a 10-year-old kid seeing your first naked woman, not a girl. I'm a naked woman. I mean, my whole body was just trembling. And they landed, and John and I said, well, we got to get back to Vegas. He said, I got a buddy of mine coming over about 9:15, 9:30 tonight. So let's get back. And we got back about 9 o'clock. And back in those days, they had things called photomats. Now they've been replaced by baristas where you can go get a cup of coffee, but you used to be able to drop your film off there and come back the next day and you have your print film processed and printed. So they were all closed by the time we got back to Vegas, and I'm just chomping at the bit. I have this gold in my camera, and I need to see if any of them came out unblurred. So about 9:15, knock on the front door. John goes, open the door. I'm in John's office or his den. Here comes a nice young guy. John said this guy had just moved here from Albuquerque. He was interviewing for a job out in the desert. And the guy comes in and said, hi, my name is Bob Lazar. So we're talking airplanes and stuff and the desert and whatever. And I tell him about my dilemma about having some exposed film of the F-117. Then I wait till tomorrow or the next day to get it processed. And he said, well, I have a processing unit at home. He lived off to West Charleston. So let's run over there. It take about half hour, 45 minutes, and then we'll come back here and talk airplanes and spooky stuff for the rest of the night. I said, great. So we jump in his car. We're about a half a block from Leer's house. And Lazar looks at me and he said, I feel sorry for John. I mean, the dumb son of a bitch. He's from a world famous aviation family. I mean, his dad brought Learjet to the world, and the son of a bitch believes in UFOs. How stupid is that? He said, if I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. And this is before he went to work out in the desert. Now, a year and a half later, he was silhouetted on George Knapp's special.
Yep, in the back of a van.
Yep, and Bob and I became friends. And people say, "Well, he's a plant. He never did anything or whatever." And I said, "Baloney." Yeah, I'm a fairly good read of people. Not very good on wives, but I'm a fairly good judge of character. And his story has never really changed. And when George Knapp was doing the investigation, he contacted Edward Teller, because Bob Lazar said that Edward Teller is the one who actually hired him. So he contacts Edward Teller, and Edward Teller's response was, when he's asked about Bob Lazar, was no comment. And people say, well, that proves that he's a phony. I said, no, that proves that he was real. Because if you're in the military or you're working on a classified program, you can neither confirm or deny people who worked on the program or the program itself. If Bob Lazar was a phony, if Bob was a fraud, that's all Teller had to say. I never don't know who the guy is. He's feeding you a line of bull. I wouldn't have anything to do with him. I mean, if that was true. So that was in 89, 90 timeframe. So let's fast forward to Desert Storm. I'm at the Pentagon. I've been activated. Let me step back. I had 5 years active duty. I had a 10-year break, and then 21 years with the Minnesota Air Guard as a traditional weekender, a weekend warrior. Best decision I ever made. But when I was activated for Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I was a Air Force historian. That was my specialty code. I went there and I had to read everything going to and from CENTCOM and pull anything out that was pertained to the National Guard, either the Army Guard or the Air Guard. And in my back pocket the whole time I was there, I had Bob Lazar's W-2 from the Navy when he worked at S4. Now I blocked out his Social Security number, and I had a couple hours to kill. And then, so I decided I was going to see if I can find the Navy operation that sent out the W-2. So I'm looking, I found something that was close. I think it was Naval Investigator Services or something to do with the Navy and investigations. And I go up there and I'm in uniform. At this particular time, I'm a tech sergeant. And I go in there and I find the room. There's a young, I think a Lieutenant JG sitting behind the desk. And I said, "Sir, can you tell me where this place is?" And I hand him Bob's W-2. And he looks at it and he said, "Excuse me for a minute." Goes into the 2-star's office, the Rear Admiral's office. He's in there about 30 seconds. He comes out. He said, "The Admiral will see you now." Now, those of you who are familiar with how Navy admirals are towards enlisted people, probably the lowest form of life that a Navy admiral could see would be, oh, an enlisted Air Force guy. So there's, I'm even not sure how to put it. I must have really hit his hot button. So I go in there, I give him a real sharp salute, and he says, "Sergeant, at ease." No, parade rest. He didn't say at ease. So I'm sitting there, parade rest, and he's looking at Bob's W-2. And he says, "Sergeant, I don't know where you got this piece of paper, but if I ever see your face cross the threshold of my office ever again, you're going to be the most sorry son of a bitch in NCO in the United States military. Do you understand each other, Sergeant?" I said, "Yes, sir." And with that, he put Bob's W-2 in a shredder. And he said, "You're dismissed." So I gave him a sharp salute, did an about face, and walked out of his office. I'm saying, for a guy who's supposedly phony, to get a 2-star admiral to get incredibly excited about Bob Lazar, that just one more piece of proof that Bob was there. When George Knapp was doing the investigation, to validate if Bob Lazar was real, Bob had told him that he had a jet car, which I'd seen, and he was written up in the local Albuquerque newspaper. And I don't have a copy of it now, but back then I had a copy of it, and it says Sandia scientist or professor likes to do fun things on weekend, like go 300 miles an hour in his car. And that, right? It was a picture of Bob. It was a picture of his car. And so there's no mistaking Bob Lazar, what he looks like. So that proved that, one, he was at Sandia. He was written up in the newspaper, and it showed his picture. He also told George Knapp of the room he worked in, the guys that were in his lab with him, and the phone number to the office. So when George was in Albuquerque, he made it over to the Sandia library. They have a public part of the library. And he went and found a phone directory for the time that Bob said he was there. And lo and behold, there was a Robert Lazar listed in the room that Bob said he was in with the phone number that he said he had. So that was just one more thing to say that, hey, I'm real. Now, Bob's Social Security number, according to the federal government, his original one, was never issued. He did, and as good as the government is of erasing people, depending on what you've done and what kind of trail you've left behind. They would have a hard time erasing my existence because I've been a pain in the butt to so many people for so long. I'm all over the place. So Bob is a guy, he could have made a lot of money early on if he would have embellished what he did or lied about what he did. But he didn't. He said he couldn't. And he also told me last time I sat down with him was, it was about 5 years ago now. He said the biggest mistake he ever made was going public. He said if he would do it again, if he could start all over again, he would probably have left about the same time, because it was an environment that it was alien. It's a good word, alien to him, and he didn't want to be there. So.
Well, he's got a compelling story, and George Knapp was able to verify at least those two key points. I'd never heard about his W-2, so that's really interesting that you had a hold of that. And of course, it is interesting as well that you were called into that admiral's office, that he shredded it immediately. And like you said, why would they do that if there was nothing to it, if this guy was a quack? And like you said, his story has stayed remarkably consistent over the years, which is very hard to do if you're lying. And the things that he said were so fantastic that it's been an incredible element to the story of UFOs and to the mission of us getting some sort of disclosure or moving us forward on at least that the government knows what's going on and that they're doing something about it, right?
Well, I had, along the same lines, I had the honor to be a sort of like a pen pal, but via the phone, with Ben Rich, who replaced Kelly Johnson at the Skunk Works. And Ben and I spoke on average about once a quarter for 25 years.
Now, let me interject here because for the people out there that don't know who Ben Rich was, he took over as the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, as well as he has a couple of very famous and ominous quotes that he is credited to. Like his, we have the means to take ET home again, and it would
Correct.
take an act of God and to get him out of the black projects that they're in. He is just famous for wanting to tell the full story, but not being able to. And he was embedded in the number one secretive aircraft type of a manufacturer. So I apologize. I wanted to give a little bit of context for why Ben Rich is important.
Yeah. Just Ben died around Christmas time. I think it was 96. But I called him at USC Medical Center, and we were talking about the late John Andrews from Testers, because John had come out with his monster F-117 model, the 32nd scale, thanks to my photographs. And John could get more things out of a photograph than anybody I know. But I was talking to Ben and about advanced technologies or whatever. And then Ben said something that just struck me. He said, Jim, we have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend, not what you think you can build. And he was referring directly to me as far as not what you think you can build in 50 years, but what you can comprehend. And if you've seen movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. I said, Ben, you want to expand upon that? He said, typical Ben, no. And he passed away about 10 days later. So he had agreed before he got his cancer, he had agreed to do a no holds barred video interview with me, all questions answered, but we both ran out of time. I mean, that would have been a barn burner right there. But again, I'm blessed to have him as someone I said was my friend.
Absolutely.
And in his book that he did with Leo Janos, I got the last copy he ever autographed. And it was to Jim Goodall, the Skunk Works' biggest fan and the proud crew chief of number 128, which was the A-12 that I acquired because of Ben. And A-12, for those who don't know, that was the CIA version of the Blackbird. and I acquired one in 1991 and moved it from California to Minnesota, going to the Minnesota Air Guard Museum inside a New York Air Guard C5. And with that movement, I'm also the only guy on the planet to have been in the cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane.
Like a Jonah and the whale type situation, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you guys were
absolutely.
transporting it. It didn't fly it, of course, so you put it in a different aircraft.
Right.
That's incredible. But the way that you got to do that as well, that's a pretty cool story. Talk about that detail.
Well, like I say, Ben and I communicated at least once a quarter. Either he called me or I call him. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing when the president of the Skunk Works calls some guy in Minnesota who really I have no direct connection to Lockheed. I have no direct connection to the Skunk Works other than I'm passionate about what they do. And he called me in August of '89. And he said, Jim, I said, I've got this from the horse's mouth. The Blackbirds aren't going to make it through Congress. And if anyone can scrounge one, you can. So I said, okay. He said, I'm giving you the heads up. If no one else knows except for a few people in Congress. So I went to my boss, it was a two-star, Major General Al Schwab. And I said, General Schwab, I'd like to get a Blackbird for our museum. He starts laughing at me. I said, sir, rather than laugh at me and say no, give me the opportunity to fail. And I said, all right, smarty, how are you going to get it here? It doesn't fly. I said, I got that covered. I said, what do you mean? I said, I called the Adjutant General of the state of New York, General Weaver. And in the Air Guard, you can violate the chain of command and not get crucified. And the chain of command in the Air Guard is only 3 levels. You have the squadron, the wing, and then headquarters, and that's it. So I called the New York Air Guard, the Adjutant General. Secretary answered the phone. I said, this is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. Is General Weaver available? I said, just a minute, Sarge, I'll put you through. So he puts me through. And I said, General Weaver, I have a proposition for you. And he said, what's that, Sarge? He said, how would the New York Air Guard like to move the world's fastest airplane in a couple of your C5s? Dead silence for a few seconds. He said, you mean the Blackbird? I said, yes, sir. He said, when you're ready, you call Woolhall. So now Pratt & Whitney was trying to get a Blackbird for West Palm Beach. They were going to put it on a big wind vane. So it'd always be even when hurricanes came through, it'd always be pointing into the wind. And they asked the Air Force if they can we lease a C5 to move something? They said, absolutely. It's $967,000 a day plus gas. I scrounged 2 C5s for 8 days each as a scrounge. I beat Sergeant Bilko hands down when it came to scrounging stuff. I scrounged a Blackbird and 2 C5s to move it. So
that just tells of who you are, and you've met some incredible people. You've done some incredible things, but it's your character, man. It's who you are. You're great. You're wonderful.
Well, there's no one who knows me has a neutral opinion of me. They either, hey, I really like Jim Goodall.
Yeah.
I can't stand that son of a bitch. I mean, there's no gray area. It's either one side or the other.
But that's like the way to be, right? I mean, that's the way you want to be. You want to at least know where you stand with everybody around you. At least you don't have two-faced people around you that say that they like you, but they don't. And so you always know exactly where you stand with everybody. But you're a real no-nonsense guy, so I can understand that.
Yeah. And like my TI told me in basic training, he said, you have everything going for you but your mouth.
I'm sure a couple of those wives would agree with him. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. Without any question. They would agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
So I want to get into UFOs with you. So
okay.
Let's talk some UFOs, man. So first and foremost, what do you think?
I was a docent at Kitt Peak National Observatories outside of Tucson for a couple of years. And at Kitt Peak, they have the largest collection of optical telescopes in the US. They have 22 telescopes from a 12-inch to a 13-foot diameter mirror. That's the Mayall 4-meter. But the 2.1 meter was used by Caltech for 5 years, where they were doing remote operation, but they had adaptive optics in it, which gave them similar quality and clarity to the Hubble. What they do when they were observing, what Caltech was looking for, they were doing a survey of a very, very small portion of the Milky Way, which is our galaxy, looking for exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system that are orbiting neighboring stars. And over the 5-year period, based on their observations, they calculate that they identified 8,000 exoplanets in a very, very small part of the Milky Way. Now, what gave the 2.1 meters such sharp images, almost as good as the Hubble, is they would shine an ultraviolet laser into the sky. And at 18,000 feet, now there was something specific. The beam had to be a specific diameter, and the computer and everything, knows where to go and look. And they would adjust their optics. They would change the shape of the mirror, their tertiary mirror, 1,200 times a second, in order to get, because what it was doing, it was canceling out any turbulence in the higher elevations of the atmosphere. Kitt Peak is at about 7,000 feet. And this part of Arizona, this part of the desert Southwest, has very, very little turbulence at altitude. And when we look up almost anywhere outside of the desert, and you look up and you see the stars, they'll twinkle. That's because of pollution and because of stuff in the atmosphere and turbulence. Down in southern Arizona, on a clear night, you look up, the stars don't twinkle. It's because they don't have that distortion. But just before I left Kitt Peak, we had a meeting with one of the senior astronomers from the National Science Foundation, came to speak to all of the docents, the astronomers, and the technicians that work at Kitt Peak. And the subject matter was exoplanets. And again, this gentleman had just returned from a gathering of astronomers. And they have calculated based on best guesstimates, that for every star in the universe, that's a huge number, not galaxies, but for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. And out of that incredible number, they figure there are 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar brown dwarf star as our sun in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. So to quote Jodie Foster's character in the movie Contact, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space.
Yep. Great line.
Yeah. Now, besides me knowing Bob Lazar, I've interviewed a lot of people about airplanes, about Area 51, about stuff. And my dad lived in Tullahoma, Tennessee. He worked he was in charge of one of the new wind tunnels there at Arnold Air Force Base there in Tullahoma. And 11 miles away is Lynchburg, Tennessee. It's the home of Jack Daniels. But it was also the home of the late Lieutenant Colonel Dave Fruhoff. He was a retired SR-71 pilot. And Dave had been in an airplane he had to bail out of. And that's why I wanted to visit him. And as we were, during the interview, he'd said that after he retired from the Air Force, that he had gotten a job at Flight Systems and eventually got a job as the facility manager at Area 51. And then I asked him, I said, "Hey, Dave, you believe in UFOs?" He said, "Absolutely, positively, they do exist." I said, "You want to expand upon that?" I was expecting him to say, "Well, I can't talk about it." He said, "Sure." I said, "Well, tell me." I said, it was either late 1972 or early 73. He's on a night training flight in an SR-71 Blackbird. At night, he's at about 77,000 feet, a Mach 2.7. It's 11 o'clock at night. He's going straight. There's a 3/4 moon off his port side, his left side. And he's just going through, you never take your eyes off the instruments when you're moving through the air at 3,000 feet per second. That's faster than a speeding bullet and more powerful than a locomotive, and even able to jump over tall buildings with a single bound.
So clears them right over. Yeah.
Right. So, he gets, all of a sudden he gets a glint off something metallic heading in the same direction at about 6,000 or 7,000 feet above him, but still going in the same direction off his starboard side, his right-hand side. So he contacts Kadena, Okinawa, where he's flying out of. And to clarify, he's in the far Western Pacific, near the Philippines. And he gets on secure voice and contacts Kadena. He said, do we have another bird up? He said, no, you're up there by yourself. He said, no, I'm not. I'm going to take a closer look. So the SR-71 and the A-12 as well, it wants to fly fast, and you keep backing the throttle back, even at Mach 3.2, you're in minimum afterburner. So he's at 2.7, and he's right at the detents before he goes out of burner. And he decided he's going to take a closer look. So he advances the throttle. He has about a 10-degree bank as he's heading up towards this object. Said it's not round, it has edges to it. And and it's metallic. That's what he's getting the glints from. And he figured when he was about a mile or two away from it, and still maybe 1,000 or 2,000 feet below this object, it took off and left him in the dust. It took off at about a 30-degree angle of attack, and he said he lost track of it, probably going through between 180 and 200,000 feet in altitude. So he said when he got to Area 51 as facility manager, he figured it was one of ours. So he told me, he said, I was responsible for every single structure at Area 51, from a paint locker to the largest hangar they have there. And it was my job to make sure that everything was secure and everything is running properly and the whole bit. And he said, so I asked him, I said, well, how about the underground facilities? And he said, Jim, we have the ability at the Nevada test site to drill holes, a 36-foot diameter hole through solid granite. But said, in the area I was responsible for, there were no underground facilities. He said, it doesn't mean there aren't any out there. It's just that, but after he was there about a year, he knew most everybody anyway, because when you have lived and operated and worked in a classified environment, which the Blackbirds were, you have a fairly high clearance. You deal with the same people on a regular basis. So he said after he was here, he said about a year, he started asking more questions. And one of the things you don't do, you work on a black program. If you're working on this widget over here, you can't, and maybe your brother or your cousin or your next door neighbor is working on something over here, you can't ask him what he's doing. It's none of your business. And if you start asking questions, you're out of here. And people say, well, how can people keep classified information classified for so long? And the simple answer is, if your life and your working life surrounds and is part of classified business, all they have to do is pull your clearance. You don't have a job. Everything you've done for the last 15 or 25 or 30 years, which has all been in a classified environment, you don't have that clearance anymore. So you're really out of luck. And that's how they control the majority of it. They're not going to prosecute you. They're not going to file charges, because if they do, and it goes to court, then they have to acknowledge the existence of the classified program. They won't do it. So they're better off by just pulling your clearance.
Yeah.
And I think younger people don't adhere to that nearly as strongly as, say, my grandparents or my parents. Now, just for the sake of putting a timeline on something, I'm 76. So my dad worked at Westinghouse. He wouldn't tell me what he did, but he helped design the ALQ 99 jamming pods for the EA-6B prowlers. And I found that out many, many years later. But you don't talk about it. That generation really kept things to themselves. So every once in a while, I would find someone who's been retired long enough. He's not worried about any repercussions. He doesn't need his clearance, so they'll talk to me. So that's what I've done. And I have a dear friend who does this, and he can't do it now because of where he works. That's Michael Schratt. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with him.
Very, very familiar with his work. I would love to have him on to talk to him. He is fascinating, man. Just the breakdowns that he has done. Like I said, I've seen a lot of his work over several years. Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's no one does it quite like Michael.
So thorough, so detailed. I mean, he is absolutely interesting and fascinating.
And the sad thing about it, he doesn't think he is. And everybody I know that's heard Michael speak are just, wow, that guy's good. Mm-hmm. But he was a nerd. He's always been a nerd, and he was picked on as a kid. And he's a very, very dear friend of mine. I think the absolute world of Michael Schratt. And anything he does it to the best if anybody can do it. When he's doing research and he's digging up stuff and the people, he has 4 storage facilities filled with 4-drawer filing cabinets with evidence and documentation of everything that he's been doing for the last 30 years.
I mean, you can't hide anything from that guy. If you can find it out, Michael Schratt will figure it out.
Right. And he's just, he does such an incredible job of what he does.
Yeah, and for those out there who don't know him, just go ahead and look him up. He's all over YouTube. He's got some phenomenal work that he's done. Right.
And then we have another guy that was in the community who just passed away April 13th was Mark McCandish. Mm-hmm. Mark was a top of his class artist when it came to aviation related artwork. And when Mark would do something, it wasn't a painting. It looked like a photograph that was actually created with pen and ink or with a brush. I mean, it was that you could almost hear the airplane. You can almost smell the exhaust. And he passed away unexpectedly, 62 years old.
Yeah.
And he's gone.
I remember hearing about that. So talented. He's incredibly talented.
Yeah.
Well, hell, man, like I said, you're a fascinating guy. You've done so much stuff. I mean, you know so many cool people, and everybody loves you. That's the thing, and that's I've never heard one person say one bad thing about you. And I know we run in the same circles here, and so but it is an honor, like I said, to be able to sit down and speak with you. So we'll probably wrap it up here in just a little bit for this iteration, but I want to have you back on for future conversations. So,
absolutely, and I won't mistake you for Darcy.
Oh, that's okay. It's fine. He'll get.
I have your name down. Brandon over here.
You do a ton of these, man, and it's okay. We've only spoken on the phone. You didn't know what I look like, so that's fine.
Right.
It's okay.
Right.
Darcy's going to get a kick out of it anyway. He's never going to let me live it down, first of all, and then that comment that you said about me looking good whenever we first started, I'm probably not going to air. He's just going to keep referring back to that. He's going to say, "Oh, you thought you were me because you look good."
Yeah.
Darcy's a great guy. We love him to death.
Yeah.
So I do want to know, I know we had talked about the exoplanets and we talked about the probability that of course, life exists somewhere else, right? The numbers are just there with the Drake equation and everything. Out in the 50s, of course, the probability of there being other life on other planets is just, it's asinine to think that there's not, right? Or it is a huge waste of space. That's the only other alternative, right?
Right.
So what do you think? Do you think that that's the answer for it, or does that explain it? Does that explain some of it, not maybe necessarily all of it? Do you think that it is other entities or civilizations that exist in other parts of the galaxy or the universe that have figured out a way to traverse those distances by making it easy?
Yeah, according to Bob Lazar, who I give him 100% authenticity. Let's say this is the universe. You're over here. You're over here. You're over here, and you want to go over here. You focus your beam on this location, and as soon as you release the field, you're there. There is no time interval involved to go from one side of the universe to the other side. Now, to go back to my involvement at Kitt Peak, and people up there are great. I had a chance to go through the mirror lab. That's where they make all the really, really big mirrors for all the big telescopes now. And they're in the process. I think it'll be done at the end of 22. And I'm not sure when first light will be built, but they are building the giant Magellan telescope. It's going to have 7 27-foot diameter mirrors, all focused on one secondary mirror. And they figure, and it's at 16,000 feet, it's down in Chile, and they're 200 miles from the nearest town, so there's no light pollution. And it's a desert, so it's dry. But they figure that they will be able to look back at within 100,000 light years of first light.
You know,
and I think what they're going to find is a smiley face.
You just put some money on that. I bet they would, because that's one of the most mind-bending things about looking out into the stars, right? When you look at something and it's 10,000 light years away, you're looking at it as it was 10,000 years ago. That's
Correct.
What's so fascinating about me. So there's a civilization out there that's looking at this Earth that's 65 million miles away or whatever, light years away. They're seeing dinosaurs on this planet right now.
Correct. Unless they've been here.
And that's true too. And that trips me out. Like just that concept that's how all this works. I remember hearing that and it just blowing my damn mind, man. So do you think that that's it? Do you think there's no other possibility for extraterrestrial entities at all, like interdimensionals or, the hollow earth theory, or have you heard the theory that they are possibly future humans coming back in time machines? Have you heard of that one?
There's been a whole bunch of stuff pop up just recently on people come back from, they were in 2610 or something like that, and they've come back to 2021 or 2020.
Yeah, and I've heard those kind of specific time traveler type of stories, with like the John Teeter stuff. And then there's been a few people that claim that they're from the future. They look just like us, and he's saying, the air sucks in the future or whatever. I don't know how to substantiate any of that stuff, but there's a biological anthropologist, Dr. Michael P. Masters, that I've interviewed for the show. It's a great interview. He wrote a book called Identified Flying Objects, and that's one of his things, right? So he's a biological anthropologist. He's a professor at a tenured professor at Montana Tech University in Butte, Montana. So his specialty is in knowing what we used to look like and then being able to accurately, pretty damn accurate, depict what we will look like in the future. And he thinks that these entities or these aliens and one of his arguments is, and it's a fascinating one, that the fact that they're bipedal, right? Bipedal there's a lot of perils in that. There's a lot of perils being upright with 2 arms, 2 legs, a head to torso. It's something that's only evolved on this planet one time, and it's been us. And
in some cases, some of the great apes are, they're seeing more and more of them that are walking upright.
Yes, and they'll do that either to have physical advantages or to mimic humans that they've seen. So you even see like these orangutans who will take a spear, and they make a spear, and then they fish with it because they've seen local, I think it's Filipino population doing that, right? So they're mimicking the acts of humans that they've seen. So that's one possibility for it. But also bears. You see bears walking upright on two legs. So it is possible. But as far as being evolutionarily to be able to utilize it as well as we have, it's only been us, right? And we're not even the most optimal thing. And then you have to think about, and something that he brings up in his book as well, is that the density on Earth is the way that it is, so therefore it allows us to be the way that we are. So
Correct.
you would have to, down to the micron, all the chemical makeup, all the gravity, the oxygen, the just being a carbon-based life form rather than a silica-based life form. And so then you're talking about completely different sets of guidelines, but damn near all of them are bipedal, even if they're the mantis or we hear about the reptilians, the mantis beings, things like that. All of them are bipedal. And it's just an interesting thing to think about. And it's one of my more favorite theories. Honestly, I don't know what they are. I don't know if they are interdimensional. I've heard some great theories. I've heard some great arguments on it, to be honest with you. But on this show, man, we don't plant our flag. I like to talk about ideas, and especially with somebody like you that's been so tapped in, I wanted to know what your opinion was on it, or what you thought.
Well, I mean, I think biologists and medical people who are interested in possible aliens said more than likely they'll be symmetrical on both. There'll be this mirror image on either side if you go down the middle. We'd have two eyes, some type of nose. There'll be some type of orifice to bring food in or nutrition. They depending on where they're coming from, they may be muscular, or they may, if they live in a real low gravity area, they may be very fragile. And I've never felt that we were alone. I have never felt that. I have, ever since I was a little kid, I've always looked to the sky, and I still do today. I mean, I go out in my backyard at night when the planting light, not the lights, the lights I have going around, go around the fence and whatever, foundation lighting, if you call it that. I'll go out there and wait for my eyes to adjust, and I'll sit on the edge of the hot tub and look up. And it's absolutely amazing the amount of stars you see. Now I've been to the fence line at Area 51 in Tonopah 80 times in the last 40 years. I've been doing this for a long time. But when my son was about 15, that was 30 years ago. Holy buckets. When my son James was 15, I took him to Area 51. And we camped out at the fence line. And we were hidden, we were camouflaged, and it was just a fun time. We were there for 5 days, and the stars were so bright that and of course he's young too, so he has good eyes. He could read by starlight. There was enough illumination, and he said, when it was like this first or second night we were there, he said, "Dad, I got a question." I said, "What's that, James?" He said, "When we're out here today, there were no clouds. And now there's this big, huge band of clouds going across the sky." And I said, "James, that is the Milky Way." He said, "Oh my God, never seen that before." Because he lives in the city, he lives in Minneapolis.
Well, and did you hear, there was a time when, I want to say it was LA, and they had, with that big blackout, and people were calling the cops because they were scared of what they saw in the sky, because nobody had ever seen that in the sky, the Milky Way and all the stars. They didn't know that that's what it looked like.
Correct.
Yeah, so they were calling all these people, or they were calling the cops, just losing their damn minds, freaking out, thinking something's wrong. It's just wild.
It's really amazing as far as numbers go. I mean, the number of stars out there, I could fill my entire office up with zeros this small, and it wouldn't even scratch the surface.
Yeah, what do they say? There's more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on all the beaches in the world.
Correct.
I mean, it's just mind blowing. You can't wrap your mind around it. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, and it's just we're not alone. We just can't be. I mean, and as far as UFOs, like I talked about Dave Fruhoff, chasing a UFO and a blackbird and get, left in the dust. My boss, when I was on state staff for the Minnesota Air Guards, Major General Wayne Gatlin, one a hell of a photographer. And one of the reasons I joined the Guard was because of him and Ray Kozlowski, who was the deputy commander, and John Broman. But I asked General Gatlin once, I said, sir, I said, have you ever encountered UFOs? And he said, I chased one. I said, what do you mean? He said, it was mid-50s. There's an Air Force station in Findlay, Minnesota. It's right on the shore of Lake Superior. It's near Split Rock. This is when they had active duty alert at Duluth Air Force Base, and the Guard was also on alert. And there was an unidentified, an unknown in the middle of Lake Superior moving at a high rate of speed. So they launched 3 F-94C starfighters. And they head out, and they're going as fast as they can. I mean, they're not like today's jets that can go Mach 1 or Mach 2, or in case the Blackbird's Mach 3. And they spot this object way ahead of them. And the WISO, the weapons systems operator, he turns on his weapons radar, and as soon as he locks on, the radar just dies. He does it again. He pulled the circuit breaker, put the circuit breaker back in. He gets a lock on, and the radar dies. And I think General Gatlin said his backseater did it, 3 times, and then the thing sped off. I mean, much faster than they could catch up with them. And they're talking to Findlay, because Findlay still has them on radar. And Findlay said, they're heading right towards us at a high rate of speed. And he said, so are we. We can't use burner because it burns too much fuel. And you don't want to crash into Lake Superior. The water is like 39 degrees.
Yeah, let's avoid that.
In the summer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so the guys at Findlay all of a sudden yells out, we've lost it. We no longer have it on our radar. And as General Gatlin's getting closer, he was a major at the time. As he was getting closer, he said, well, the reason you didn't pick it up as it went by you, it's right over you. It's hovering above you. And General Gatlin said they got close enough so they could see the object. But as soon as the guys came out, this thing went straight up. Wow. Visibility unlimited, and it disappeared. Jeez. And this is the 1950s. So are we alone?
Nah, of course
nope.
not. Of course not.
The odds are against it.
Completely agree, man. Completely agree.
Yeah.
So I tell you what, Jim, let's cut it on that, and then I'm going to have you back to tell some more cool stories here in the near future, okay?
Yeah, and I want to accuse you of being Darcy.
No, you're fine. Actually, I'm going to put like a Darcy. I'll do a deep fake. Have you seen that where they can put people's faces over you?
Oh, yeah. Doc Skinner does it all the time.
Yeah, there you go. I was about to say, yes, you and Doc are good friends. Great guy.
Yeah.
And so, I'll do that. I'll just wear a Darcy face for our next interview. That's great. Like I said, he's going to get a big kick out of this, and I got a big kick out of it, too. I don't take it personally. Yeah. You're great.
Well, my life is sort of upside down right now. November 27th of 18, my wife had her right kidney removed because it was cancerous, and they thought they got everything. And about 3 weeks ago, they informed us that last time she had an X-ray or CT scan, they found somewhere else. So my mind's been a little bit
you're perfectly fine.
Not too focused. But the way I look at it, it's her doctors at Mayo Clinic up in Phoenix. I had 9.5 hours of brain surgery at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, back the day that Challenger blew up. I was under anesthesia for 11 hours. That's a long time. I wasn't supposed to make it. So I figured I made it. I'm still here. They'll do a good job with my wife. And if it was really serious, they would have brought her in the next day. That's the way they operate.
That's a great point. And we're going to keep her in our prayers and our good vibes. So guys, send your love out for Jim and his wife here. So thank you so much, man. This is honestly. All right. Well, Jim Goodall, I cannot thank you enough for your time, sir. If you don't mind, just tell the folks out here where they can find you, and I'm going to get you scheduled for another one.
Well, I'm on Facebook, Jim Goodall. right now I'm on my 7th 30-day jail of
Yeah,
Facebook.
you're a troublemaker.
I'm politically incorrect.
Right. Could you tell the truth?
And the now, are you on mute or is it me?
You're good. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing up at the top up here says mute, but
no, you're green
Okay.
over here, Bubba.
okay. Where was I?
Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah, I've been in Facebook jail. They put me in jail just yesterday. I've only been out of jail for 10 days, and I get dinged for stuff I don't even post.
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Do not pass go.
That's right.
But if they want my books, now I have 27 books in print. You go to Amazon, probably the fastest and cheapest way. You go books by James C. Goodall, Goodall. And my four books from Sheffer, which were the Los Angeles class, Fast Attacks, Volume 1. Volume 2 is the Virginia and Seawolf class. And these are hardbound, 160 to 175 pages. Then I have my Blackbird book from Sheffer. And to quote Jeff Babion, who is the vice president general manager of the Skunk Works, I sent one to him, autographed it, and sent it to him. He said, I only have one word to describe your Blackbird book: spectacular. So Elon Musk has my Blackbird book on his desk.
How cool. How cool is that?
And I got a call from SpaceX inviting me with one or two other friends to go on a tour of SpaceX. So
well, it's out here in Texas. So when you come, man, scoop me up. We'll go down there, and you can come hang out at the ranch with the wife and I for a day or so.
Oh, I'd love to go down and watch a launch. That would be a kick.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's go do that.
But
That'd be fun.
But the two people that I'm inviting are Joel Christopher Payne, super guy. He's a cartoonist for Disney, and he does all sorts of other stuff. And he's just a neat guy. And his best friend is Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry's son. Yeah, Gene Roddenberry's son.
Wow.
So it's the three of us sometime in June, assuming that everything works well, should be getting a tour of the SpaceX facility in Hawthorne.
How cool.
Now I asked if I can get a picture with Elon Musk holding my book, and his personal secretary said, highly unlikely that would happen.
Oh, I'll get with Darcy. We'll Photoshop one in. That's not a problem. That's okay.
Yeah.
You'll have one by the end of the week. No big deal.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and again, I just, there's stuff in Amazon for used books for me. Jim Goodall, J.C. Goodall, James Goodall, James C. Goodall.
Yeah, any way you can do it. And I'm going to link all of this in the show notes. So actually, the audience knows this. They're great about it. You can just go down in the bottom. You just click right on that link. It's going to take you to exactly where you can find Jim if he's not in jail, as well as his books. And you can pick some of those up there. Incredibly well done, guys. He is fascinating. There it is.
That. I'm so proud of this book.
Yeah, 75 years of Skunk Works. It's so cool.
It's 384 pages, 1,100 plus photos, and I covered 43 programs.
Incredible.
And it's fun.
And it's fun. And it's amazing. I mean, just look at the bookshelf behind you there. So if you guys aren't seeing this on YouTube, go check the YouTube out. Of course, you all know how to do this. Jim Goodall, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. We'll do it again soon.
Sounds great.
All right. Brandon, you have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
A true honor to be able to sit down with the legendary Jim Goodall today. All of the ways, of course, guys, to find him will be linked in the show notes. Go check that out for his books as well as his Facebook. I'll be linking that as well if you just want to reach out. He's a sweetheart. he'll talk to you. He'll say hi because he's great. And some fascinating information and some great stories, man. That guy's just lived an incredible life. And it was just, like I said, a true honor to be able to sit down and speak with him today. So all the ways to find this show is going to be one central hub there. Actually, you can just go to expandingrealitypodcast.com. That is where the links to all of the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the YouTube is up there as well. Patreon, if you guys find the show valuable, check that out. Also on TikTok. I haven't linked that in the website yet, and I'll probably do that soon. It's weird, don't judge me. There's actually some really cool stuff on there. If you haven't spent so much time on TikTok, go check it out. There's some really cool stuff. And it's interesting. So, beyond that, guys, this week, pick up a piece of litter, get out of that left-hand lane, smile at somebody, buy them a meal, pet a strange dog or just a normal dog, whatever you feel. Just go out into the world, guys, and be good to one another. Thank y'all so much for listening. We'll see you next time.